So welcome to this episode of the Zen Teachings podcast. I'm really excited tonight. I'm talking to someone I've met and been very impressed with, Dr. Rachel. She's a licensed clinical psychologist with over a decade of experience in psychology, supporting people take inspired action to connect to self-discovery, healing, healthy habits, and enhancing balance and living life passionately and authentically. She helps her patients unpack old, unconscious wounds, discover their voice, learn healthy boundaries, connect deeper to core values, learn to trust their intuition, and experience empowerment in their lives. Across her work, Dr. Rachel encourages mindfulness, self-compassion, spiritual development, and cultivating an unwavering sense of worth. You can find more of her practical wisdom and accessible how-tos. I'll also give her a chance to give her own shout-outs, but at heydrrachel.com. That's hey, H-E-Y-D-R, Rachel, R-A-C-H-E-L.com. And on Instagram, it's Power Purpose Pros. She's also got a YouTube channel. I was very fortunate that she reached out. She saw the Zen Teachings page and thought that we would probably share some things in common. Turns out we did. We actually tried to do a podcast last week, but we're both a little better at mindfulness than technology, and so here we are at our second attempt. So, Rachel, thank you for joining.
Hi, Rudy. It's my pleasure. I'm so grateful to get to talk to you again.
Oh, me too. Thank you. I had a great time. Our last conversation. I just wish it was recorded. Here we go. So yeah. So we talked. We wanted to do it. We had a great connection the first time. And I asked what you thought would be good with your practice and what you're experiencing, what you thought would be a relevant topic. And if you don't mind, I'm going to just go ahead and read what you sent over, and we can kind of use that as a launch pad. So when I asked, she said relationships are a critical component of our overall well-being. The healthier and more mindful we are in ourselves, the more safe, enriched, and nourished our relationships will be with others. It can be difficult to stay regulated in relationships, often because others can trigger internal states that are unpleasant. When we're triggered by something someone else has said or done, it's often because of an old relational trauma, an unmet need, or an area in ourselves that we judge harshly or feel insecure about. Relationships are the best teachers we have to better learn how to take care of our pain points, nurture our triggers, and get curious about what gets in the way about having healthy, reciprocal, safe, and satisfying relationships. Mindfulness can help us slow down enough to check in with ourselves and to find the space to ask ourselves what we most need and want in our relationships and in what ways we can cultivate that for ourselves. It gives us the chance to get curious, present, and take responsibility for caring for ourselves wholly, which invariably opens up to others who will follow suit. So there is a lot to unpack in that proposition for a discussion.
What jumps out at you, Rudy, out of that? What compels you the most to sort of bring to life in discussion?
Well, I think what jumps out a lot to me is absolutely, I think, relationships. I mean, they in a sense, kind of define our experience of life. How we interact with others has a lot to do with what we get out of the world, how happy we feel, how fulfilled we feel. And, of course, the dangers of picking the right person, be that as a romantic relationship or even as a friendship, and how the wrong person can have a negative impact. And from my point of view, I think it's kind of important to really know yourself before you can explore that with somebody else. And I heard a saying once that, everybody comes with baggage. The trick is to find someone who helps you unpack it. You're not going to find somebody who is going to be baggage-free, as we've all lived in the world for a number of years. We have had our experiences. So I think it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, that's a beautiful quote. I've never heard that before, and I really like that. I think, what I was trying to emphasize and relay there is that relationships are such opportunities really for us, as you said, to sort of understand ourselves better and take responsibility for ourselves around things that might still need some support or healing or, at the very least, reflection. And I think mindfulness is this wonderful tool that we can rely on when things in relationships with others get tough, which inevitably they will at some point or another. And I think I see people in my work struggle often with feeling frustrated by someone or irritated or act out in ways that they end up really regretting. And so I can, encourage people to use mindfulness to give themselves the chance to sort of slow down enough to get curious about what's happening for them that other people they're in relationship with hits on.
Do you find that kind of piggybacking a little bit on that, I think that for sure we have things in our relationships that are frustrating and so on. I think that people now sometimes lack the tools to appropriately deal with that. And that's why I find mindfulness and responding well to different things, if they're adverse or irritating about your partner or whatever it is. I think that we've gotten to a place where we're so interconnected, especially with internet, Tinder and Bumble and everything else, where it's just easy to meet somebody new, right? So the second that I don't like you or I'm irritated, I think that people kind of bail quickly. And I think a lot of times, A, they don't have the value for the relationship, but B, don't necessarily have the coping tools.
That's really interesting because I'm finding myself feeling like, if a relationship you're in with someone isn't nurturing and uplifting, like you said, it isn't helping you unpack the baggage, but is just sort of adding more crap onto your already full plate of stuff you have to contend with in yourself, then, I think actually mindfulness can be a strategy to relinquish relationships in your life that aren't right. I think actually I see a lot of people stay in relationships far too long because of fear, that stems from being alone forever or not feeling worth more than this person they're with. And I think that to me feels far more dangerous perhaps. But I hear what you're saying too. There's like this challenge you see a lot of people have, and I don't disagree with sort of being willing to put in the work to make a relationship or a friendship, be able to be sustained. So that is an interesting sort of balance.
It is, and I certainly agree that if you're in an unhealthy relationship, you shouldn't stick around. If people do stay around way too long, I guess what would be interesting is where do we define that? If someone were to come to you, how do you determine that this is something that's maybe worth the work and you could possibly do a little better yourself too? Or, you need to get away from this person. They're toxic. It's time to go. Right.
I think it totally depends on how distressed each person in the relationship is, on how, severe the conflicts become. I mean, if there's ever, a safety issue or if, and I think honestly, my experience is that the partners know, whoever's in relationship on some very deep level knows whether or not this is right for them. And I think it's my job to help them clear the muck enough to be able to face that truth for themselves. I can't really say, I can have an impression based on what they're sharing with me is right and healthy for them. But so I think it's nuanced and it depends. But ultimately, I will say, I think there are some general rules around healthy relationships, and I think they're one, a healthy relationship is one in which there's reciprocity. Both people have space to work through conflict in ways that feel safe and respectful and effective, even if it's hard. Both partners feel heard and understood and respected, and that there are shared values and that the fundamentals are in place enough to be able to work through anything else, and that there's communication, that they can both rely on coming together to work through whatever it is that comes up.
Mm-hmm. I think those are absolutely necessary. I found in I guess I can give a little bit about my background. In past relationships, if you've ever found yourself, if you've been in relationships and you're arguing, and then sometimes it seems like you're in a fight, and what I've shared with past relationships and so on is that we shouldn't really ever be fighting to win. Because I feel like if Rachel and I get into an argument, for me to win, necessarily you have to lose, which means you feel bad, and I guess if I'm twisted, would feel good. And the converse is true as well. If you're arguing to win, then I'm going to end up feeling bad. And I think that people get so sucked up in the moment, and this is where I think the mindfulness comes in. You get caught up in that totally natural impulse to win a confrontation. But of course, I'm not talking physical. I'm talking, it could be about how to do the dishes or who should take out the trash. I mean, something where you're just arguing, that we lose sight of the bigger goals. I think that the argument should always be for the betterment of the relationship and not necessarily to win a specific incident. And so to me, I think that honesty is key. The idea with a relationship, in my opinion, is to have someone who can help you through life and to be kind of a co-pilot. I mean, if we say that if we go with your thinking in terms of the shared values, the basic moral alignment, then two brains are better than one. And since we all make mistakes, you're probably able, when I'm about to do something stupid, you could maybe tell me, hey, you're about to step into this pothole, and as long as we have a trust and honesty there, and I think as long as both partners are aiming towards the good, and I guess that's what I mean by the arguing, and not arguing so that Rudy's right or arguing so that Rachel's right, but arguing for the betterment of the relationship. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really powerful, actually. I think that's a really vital insight, and I would wonder about the impulse any one person had in a relationship to be right. What is that need that they have? Is that like a sense of feeling power in the dynamic? Do they feel, unseen in other ways, and that this is like this way to grasp that, whatever it is. But so I think those are opportunities to really look at where is that prideful stance coming from and why, and how is that getting in the way, and are there other more effective ways at communicating that need specifically. And one thing that we say often in therapy, in the realm, in the sphere of therapy, is that it's never about the dishes, right? Like, it's never about, there's the layers go so deep. And so, if there is an argument about the dishes, that is an indication of someone's need not being seen or met, really, and a disintegration of the partnership. And so I really like what you were saying about, that at some point the relationship becomes greater than either individual's triggers or whatever, that it really becomes about nurturing and protecting the relationship than it does yourself.
Oh, I think that, but you made some really good points about if you're in a bad relationship having to leave. And I do believe that we're too quick to bail, but that's assuming that both partners have good intentions, at least, which certainly some don't. Some people are deceptive, some people are, abusive, and you need to get the hell out of those relationships.
Right.
But assuming that we would like the good, right, other than to the extent that we're capable of doing it as two human beings who are capable of all kind of stupid things, and we'll probably do stupid things tomorrow. But assuming that we have the idea that we want the relationship to work, I've found that you can't make somebody who doesn't want help get help or be helped rather, which I'm sure you've experienced in your practice. If someone's parents say bring them in because they're acting up in school, but they don't think they have a problem, and they're really not trying to hear you. I don't know how effective counseling, forced counseling, things like that could be. Whereas if we both have the idea that we want it to work, that's where I think you look at more the meta goal as opposed to the dishes or what have you.
Right. Yeah. So like, it sounds like you're saying there needs to be invested energy in making it work. And I think certainly, and even if there is, it doesn't always mean that the relationship will live on. And I think that's okay too. You know, I think not every relationship may be meant, to last a lifetime. And I think Dan Savage talks a lot. He's a sex and love columnist in Seattle, and he talks a lot about, the way that our culture and society views the success of relationships, and that some people stay in relationships over the course of a lifetime and are miserable. And it's totally shut down, and there's no real intimacy and love, and that just because though they've stuck it out, that somehow we deem that as being successful. Whereas if someone's in a partnership and they do put in the effort to make it work, and it only lasts for 6 months or a year, and they come to a place where they realize it's not right for them, that's a success. If they're able to leave that, learn about themselves and what they need moving forward from themselves and in relationships, then that's really what it was for. So I like to, yeah.
No, that's really deep. I agree with you on that. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to add that I think, every relationship we have is people in our lives that come are teachers, and they're opportunities for us. They come and meet a need, I think, for us to further develop in our own process. And so in that way, every relationship is a rich one, even if it's really tumultuous and conflicted. And I think if people, to your point, if people are willing to be reflective, to take a conscious, mindful stance, it's incredible what can happen from relationships that work and relationships that don't. It doesn't really matter so much as it is how open you are to learning from it.
So why do we have, because I've been in relationships that went way beyond what they should have. We should have broken up a long time ago. And then there's times where you may regret and think, maybe I should have put in more effort. And I don't know if you've had that experience. I can just speak for myself. But why do you think it is that people stay when they should go, or I guess leave when they should stay? I mean, what is it that makes somebody? I think there's something to the idea of the old saying of, the devil you know is better than the one you don't, and that kind of thing. I think maybe people get stuck there.
Right.
Because, he hits me, but at least he doesn't do that. Or she hits me, but at least she doesn't do this. So you can it's this chaos that you are at least used to, and you're aware of the boundaries, but that's certainly not healthy, right? I mean, it's not. Yeah. It's just interesting in finding that line. And then something that I started doing that has helped is that anytime, we have to understand and accept that even though everybody's right from their point of view, it takes two people in a relationship. So oftentimes now if I argue, I will try to step back and say, what did I do that could have caused this or could have made it worse than it already is? And I'd ask that whoever I'm with do the same, and then you can calm down and re-examine some of your own behavior. And again, I think that is a tool that is possible only because of, for me personally, because I tend to be by nature I have a lot of impulsive tendencies, but I think meditation is really help me to take that extra breath, you know. And so I think it's interesting that people do need to, they stay when they should leave, and you're absolutely right. So I don't know, what do you think the motivation there is?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sort of sharing a little bit about, you know, your own process around some of this, and there's a lot of merit to this idea of owning your part in a dynamic. And I learned this from Marianne Williamson, who I just idolize. And I use this in my work with people who come in to the office and complain about their partners. And I say, and I learned this from Marianne, you know, 90%, let's just say 90% is your partner. You know, you're here now, so we have the 10% to work with. And I think that's imperative for people to own what's either keeping them in a relationship that isn't working, preventing them from leaving, you know, or leaving one that could potentially be really good for them, but that they're too scared to, you know, get into the nitty-gritty of intimacy with. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, as you sort of read in the intro, that I pointed to traumas. You know, we have working models of relationships that live really deep inside our psyches and even ourselves, you know, and that we learn very early on about what relationships are and what we can expect from them and what we can expect from other people in our lives. So if we didn't have good models for healthy, reciprocal, loving relationships, we're going to struggle with that unless we really do the hard work to learn and deprogram some of that stuff. And so, yeah, I think it's a lot of self-limiting thoughts. I can't do better. You know, this is the best it's going to get for me. I'm not worth better than this. Like, it's not that bad, like you were saying.
So does that come from a bad model? If we take the idea then of we have these ingrained ideas of what a relationship should be. Do we run from good relationships or stay in bad relationships because we don't have the proper mental representation of what a healthy relationship is? Or is it more that we don't value ourselves?
Well, I'd say it's a culmination of factors. It's both of those, I'd say, depending. And then it's also society, it's culture, it's familial expectations, it's, you know, where developmentally, potentially, it's all of those things, I'd say, that goes into someone's choices when it comes to this. If the choices they're making remain unexamined. And that's where mindfulness and meditation kicks in for all of this, that it provides this wonderful opportunity to slow down enough with ourselves to really figure out what's ours and what isn't. And the stuff that isn't ours, that also isn't working for us in our lives because we're not happy in this relationship, or we would have been happy had we have stayed potentially, you know, that gives us the chance to say, like, what is this why do I keep getting in my own way here? And how can I stop doing that? Sure, because we see patterns,
right?
That?
People do the same things over and over.
Right, exactly.
How can we stop doing that?
Yeah. And that's where I think, you know, therapy definitely kicks in, or a devoted meditation practice, or, you know, seeking out these opportunities to challenge old ways of being, and then really figure out how you can, you know, try those on and take the risk. And I think fear is a big part of this. You know, people are frightened a lot of the time. I mean, really, fear is powerful, you know, for a lot of people, and it keeps people small and stuck in relationships and in a million other ways. So, and relationships are, you know, fertile ground for fragility and rejection, and, you know, and that's hard. Those things are hard. And if people don't have a strong sense of resiliency or ultimate sort of just like knowing how worthy they are, or confidence, that then the fear just will win, because they can't bear the thought, their ego, and if that's sort of the one running the show, can't bear a conflict or a rejection. And so people don't say what they need. They you know. So, yeah, I think fear is another big part of the whole story here when it comes to relationships that people are in that aren't working for them.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and it kind of goes back to, is it the chicken or the egg, right? I mean, from my point of view, I've kind of had the belief that we don't know who we are, and we change. I'm certainly not the same person at 30 that I was at 20, that I was at 10, and I'm sure I'll be different by the time I'm 50, but
right.
You have to kind of have a sense of who you are before you can really be with someone. However, that kind of what you're saying, it's a tough area to navigate because we're all constantly evolving, constantly growing. And
hopefully.
Hopefully. Hopefully.
I mean, no, I think some people don't and aren't, and that's the problem. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think the more people do take themselves to task to grow, to transform, to evolve, then they attract people who are doing the same, and they can be sure that then they're on the same path of evolving in ways that are aligned with one another. And if they're not, they'll know how to figure it out together because they're conscious, they're online. So I think that's the biggest part of it. That's actually what you're saying, that's the prerequisite for health, that you are growing and transforming. And if you are, you'll find people to do that with.
Yeah, I like that. That's a beautiful way to put it. That's very good.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad that resonates. Yeah.
It does, very much so. I guess my only, I don't know, what I see a lot of, and again, just to go back, and certainly there's relationships that need to go, but I find that, I don't know if it's because of the fear that you just alluded to, or the refusal to grow that some people exhibit. We do tend to, we can't stand to look in the mirror. We can't stand to see what did I do to get us here. How did I contribute? No matter what it is, you're 100% responsible for your 50%. You didn't, make it great on your own. You'd make it terrible on your own. And I think that sometimes we get into a danger of being so instant gratification, and there's so much different stimuli out there that we just don't put in the work sometimes. I can take it back there a little bit. And I guess it's a kind of having to know yourself to know when it is a instance of having to put in the work versus when it's time to move on.
Right. Yeah, and I guess, it is. It can feel like hard work, and the truth is it's only through that type of, and you talk about this often, Rudy, in the martial arts practice, and meditation can be really hard, and it's the fact that it's challenging on some level that makes it so incredibly enriching, and it ultimately becomes this worthwhile achievement. And then I do think you get to a point where you've achieved some stability of internal security because now you've developed the skills, you put in the work, you know what it takes. And it's a practice that someone has to cultivate every day, but it feels aligned with who you are. So it's like, of course you're going to do this thing for yourself and for your partner and your friends and your family. It's like you get to a point where it's like it doesn't make sense to do anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's a healthy relationship, then you want it to flourish. And anything you can do that would help that doesn't really seem like work. And I think that's one of the things, especially if you're in a long-term relationship. I think the goal and to keep in mind that I see people missing out on is that we jump into stuff a little bit too fast. I know people that they wake up and they're 32, let's say, and they feel like they're behind some societal clock, and then all their friends are getting married, so they get married, and it's like you've been dating the guy for a month, and here you're engaged, and this is the love of your life, and that may be true. Maybe it's one of those hit by a lightning bolt type situations, but probably not, and I think that people jump into things a lot of times to please others, and it really, what you said in the beginning resonated to me in terms of how we deem a successful relationship. I can tell you that in my and because of what we say, oh, they lasted 50 years, that's a successful relationship, when really they were miserable 45 years, and they should have, parted at that time. But I can I see it all the time, people and that are a little younger than me, and one of them gets engaged, and then all of a sudden it's like a cascade. 8, 9 girls are all engaged, and it's almost like a keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing.
Right.
And I think that we don't take marriage and relationships serious enough. It's not about what other people think. It's about what you're getting out of it, what your partner's getting out of it, and more importantly, what you all bring to the relationship together. I like that idea. I was at a wedding not too long ago, and part of the tradition, it's probably I've seen it in a couple, but I just recently saw this where the bride and the groom each have a candle, and then there's one candle in the middle, and then whatever words are said, they light the candle together, and then there's that one flame, right? And so I think the idea, if we're doing it right, is that the man shouldn't be in charge, the woman shouldn't be in charge, it should be that light, it should be the relationship. And so if there's anything you're subordinate to, it is not to your husband, it's not to your wife, it's to the relationship. And if your goals are proper, if your methodology, if your intent is pure, and again, if you're aiming at being the very best person, the very best version of yourself that you can, and I think those are the ones that can and should work out. But if it's about me, and if it's about being right in the moment, then you're doomed, because part of vows is the whole in sickness and in health, and things are going to go wrong, and people can't help but push your buttons, so to speak. And if we're ready to go at the drop of a hat, I think that's kind of a bad recipe. But I also, again, I see the other side of it. So it's just something that maybe having a deeper understanding of yourself, having a support system, people to talk to, bounce off ideas off of, we just kind of navigate it. There may not be a clear, this is right, this is wrong.
Right. That was really beautiful. Yeah, I think you're hitting on something important, along those lines, which is people struggle with not knowing, and the ambiguity and the muck, and there's so much of that in relationships, and it is hard to tolerate, if you feel like your partner's mad at you, or if you've done something that you regret, and there are different types of ways that, we relate to each other. And so anyway, I think finding harmony and cultivating a loving, patient stance and owning your own emotional regulation in the face of the difficulties is imperative if you want to be in a healthy relationship. And one thing I just want to add, I can't help but continue to bring this to mind, is another Dan Savage quote. He always says, when it comes to settling down, there is some settling for, and he talks about the price of admission. It's sort of like, what are you willing to put up with to be with this person who invariably is going to be flawed, like you said, to your point, and so there will have to be a practice of letting go of the things that drive you up the wall because of the other things that you've decided mean enough to you to be with this person. I think, and the more conscious you are every single day in your life, the more able you are to navigate that, I'd say.
That's absolutely right. And I think I always sound like I'm just harping on social media and everything else and being down on it, but I think it's tougher now for people because the second you're married and your husband gets a little bit fat and then you flip on your Instagram and there's some guy with a six-pack, there's just so much more temptation, and then you don't have the idea of, as you just said, what are you going to settle for? And you start, instead of being happy where you are, you're miserable where you're not. And you're looking everywhere but appreciating what you actually have and where you are. And I think that a little bit of gratitude and a little bit of self-reflection and, as you said, monitoring your own emotional environment, internal environment, could go a long way. I think that's about that.
Well, I think that's a lovely, that I there's not much more than that to say. That was well put.
I think we covered about as much as we can on relationships. How do people get in touch with you?
Well, and I just want to say, we could have gone down any one rabbit hole. I mean, there's so many layers, but I think we did. It was nice to sort of lay the groundwork, I'd say, for what it's like to be in a relationship with each other, which is really one of the richest, most primary, critical, primitive parts of being a human. We need that. I mean, it's imperative for our ability to thrive. So definitely a worthwhile conversation. Thanks for having it with me.
I appreciate your amazing insights. But how do we get in touch with you?
Okay, so as you said, I'm at heydrrachel.com. It's hey, Dr. DRRACHEL.com. And I'm at Power Purpose Pros on Instagram, on YouTube. You should just be able to find me at Dr. Rachel. And thank you so much for having me, Rudy. I'm such a fan. Zen Teachings is amazing, and I love listening to the podcast. Your voice is so soothing, and your insights are so deep and so wise. So it's been such an honor to get to participate here with you.
Well, I really, really appreciate that. It's very kind of you to say. And I sincerely enjoyed this conversation. I'm glad that we've made this connection, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, Rachel. You have a great night.